I'm going to read to you from this book today, Lives of the Presidents, Fame, Shame, and What the Neighbors Thought. It's by Kathleen Kroll and Catherine Hewitt. There are a lot of great stories in here, but I want to read about Abraham Lincoln. Born in LaRue County, Kentucky, 1809, died in Washington, D.C., 1865. Best known lawyer in Illinois, president during the Civil War, and issuer of the Emancipation Proclamation, which abolished slavery. Our tallest president, at 6 feet 4 inches, poked fun at his own looks, and the opinion was unanimous. Skinny and homely, Abraham Lincoln had a wart on his cheek, a scar over one eye from a fight with a gang of thieves, and a beard that he grew at the suggestion of an 11-year-old girl. Enemies called him a well-meaning baboon. His careless dress didn't help. Pants that were often too short. In winter, a blue cape or gray shawl fastened with a large safety pin. In summer, a linen coat, once white. Very private and undemonstrative, Lincoln was still genuinely interested in people and their problems. He would sit rubbing his chin, a good listener, compassionate and tolerant. He would also often sit alone, staring out of the window for hours. Melancholy moods gave him insomnia and many nightmares. Lincoln estimated that he had 1 year altogether of formal education, but he was always passionate about learning. His idea of a best friend was someone who gave you a book you hadn't read yet. In a famous episode, he once walked 6 miles into the woods to borrow what he had heard was a great grammar book. A few years into his administration, a new kind of book was appearing, collections of Lincoln's witticisms, retold by people who had heard him speak. The funny books were a result of Lincoln's unique way of breaking up his bouts with depression, storytelling. Always the center of attention in a group, he had jokes, tall tales, and anecdotes for every occasion. He loved puns. He really loved to laugh. It filled a need. I laugh because I must not cry, he once told a friend. His jokes also got him out of answering difficult questions, lightened up tense conversations, and deflected criticism. That reminds me of a story, he would say, and he was off. His face would light up, his eyes would sparkle, he'd give his hearty, high-pitched laugh and sometimes rock back and forth, wrapping his arms around his knees. He could make a cat laugh, insisted a witness. His storytelling skills didn't always translate into effective public speaking. His high voice distracted from his words, though the words were always eloquent, notably the 272 words that make up the Gettysburg Address. Nor was organization a strength. He frequently stashed documents in his stovepipe hat for lack of a proper place. In his office was a pile of papers labeled, "When you can't find it anywhere else, look here." Never joining any church, Lincoln read the Bible daily and thought of religion as a totally private matter. He wrestled all his life with questions about race, at first making statements that were clearly racist, later changing his opinions. Once, while on a steamboat, he saw 10 slaves shackled together and was profoundly affected. He decided the system of slavery was evil. Whenever I hear anyone arguing for slavery, I feel a strong impulse to see it tried on him personally. He despised war, but came to see the Civil War as the only means of keeping the country together. Hatred of slavery was something he found in Mary Todd. He met her at a party and told her he wanted in the worst way to dance with her. They shared much else, a love of politics and good writing, ambitious goals, but were not always compatible. She cared more than he did about what people thought and was embarrassed when people found Lincoln in his favorite position, stretched out on the floor with a piece of cornbread and a book. He was moody and liked to sit quietly before the fire at night. She was sociable and starved for talk. His own father had been harsh, but Lincoln was frequently heard to say, "It is my pleasure that my children are free, happy, and unrestricted by parental tyranny." He was an indulgent father to his 3 sons, Robert, Willie, and Tad. Tad came to be known as the tyrant of the White House for his way of twisting his father around his little finger. Lincoln sometimes helped out with child care, which was so unusual for the times that the neighbors labeled him henpecked. He read to the boys, one on each knee, the third on the back of the chair, or he hauled them up and down the street in a little wagon while he read a book, not always noticing if one of them fell out. The Lincolns allowed their sons to have all the pets they wanted, including ponies, 2 pet goats, Nanko and Nanny, who had free run and sometimes barged in on White House receptions, a gray and white cat named Bob, and a pet turkey, Jack, that the boys had saved from becoming Thanksgiving dinner. Lincoln's daily routine began with a small breakfast, coffee, and 1 egg. From early morning to dusk, he received long lines of visitors with requests, complaints, and news. His palms would become swollen and blistered from shaking so many hands. He sometimes forgot to eat lunch, or made it brief, an apple or a biscuit with a glass of milk. A teetotaler, he most often drank water. Sometimes he went for an afternoon horseback ride or a carriage ride with Mary. After dinner, he ate whatever was put in front of him, though he was partial to oysters and fricasseed chicken. He usually went back to the office for several more hours. Sometimes he wrapped his gray shawl around his shoulders and walked over to the War Department without escort or guard to follow the progress of the increasingly bloody Civil War. Getting back to Mary by midnight, he discussed the day with her. Besides swapping jokes, Lincoln relaxed by playing chess and rarely missed an opportunity to see a play, slipping into theaters unannounced and sitting in a specially provided rocking chair. After Willie became the only child ever to die in the White House from typhoid, his parents were distraught. The war took its toll on the White House, too, which gradually went shabby, with bugs in the furniture and tobacco juice stains around the spittoons. 5 days after the war ended, Lincoln went to the Ford Theater in Washington to see Our American Cousin, a popular comedy of the day. He sat in his rocking chair holding hands with Mary. When one of the lines of the play got a big laugh, the laughter covered the sound of a shot fired into Lincoln's head by John Wilkes Booth, a mentally unbalanced actor who detested Lincoln's views against slavery, as many people did at that time. Lincoln died 9 hours later at age 56 without regaining consciousness, the first president to die by assassination. Because he is now regarded as one of our greatest presidents, it is hard to imagine how disliked Lincoln was during his lifetime. He received death threats even before he was elected and got more than 10,000 of them afterward. Considering the threats a novelty, he kept some of them in his desk in an envelope labeled assassinations. But he also directed secretaries to toss out threatening letters without showing them to him. He believed that a president should not be shielded from people, and he took few safety precautions. I cannot bring myself to believe that any human being who lives would do me any harm, he said. And that's from Lives of the Presidents, Fame, Shame, and What the Neighbors Thought.